Cost of Victory, Book 1 of the Unseen Scar series by C.R. Saxon. Chapter 13. Oya's forbidden music screamed in Ferdinand's ear, while words glowed from the screen in his hands. Even before finding the article, he felt cold, empty. Gut-wrenchingly painful words magnified those sensations. Cleanup crews worldwide flooded into Azute. But the devastation. They hadn't made a dent. The westernmost countries, Oishi's countries, had their own death and destruction to clean up, as did Kadiko and Mundan. Most of Chuzo was okay. There were infected persons, just not many, and only in the western countries. Offering help to the hardest hit was a privilege few could afford. The damage plaguing Oishi was impossible to see from the Artemis's magnificent property. But then, both Father Artemis and Samuel could heal simply by touching a person, unlike normal healers. They'd never let those who worked and lived on these grounds suffer. The tune changed from harsh to comforting. Skipping to the next song, Ferdinand put down the screen. It hadn't finished turning off when Evelyn appeared and dragged him outside. The sun was blinding. Aside from time spent by the window listening to Evelyn, he hadn't seen sunlight in days. Ferdinand was back in the unmarried boy's room. Keeping up with the younger Artemis's energy was exhausting. Worse was their irrational need to hug him. It put his nerves on end, figuratively and literally. Now Evelyn was done hearing no. Outside, she showed off the playhouse Zinko built for her. It was less of a playhouse and more of a cottage. Inside were piles of stuffed toys and a giant round table perfectly suited to her. A dozen child-sized chairs surrounded it, each with a plush animal. She removed 2 of them and offered a chair to Ferdinand. Can her uncles play in here even without the chairs? Considering the barely 6-foot-tall Rigel was the smallest, it was unlikely. They started with a tea party and played the rest of the day. The sun was setting when Zinko called them inside for dinner. Evelyn insisted on sitting next to Ferdinand, which turned into sitting on his lap. She tried eating off his plate, but found his special meal didn't suit her tastes. This was unfortunate. He'd happily share. Focusing on anything but the constant lightning coursing through him was difficult, but helped by the music screaming in his ear. After dinner, they went to the common room. Evelyn taught them a new game called Butterfly Collectors. They were to collect one of every butterfly in the world so they could cast a spell, giving everyone wings. This way everyone could fly everywhere, even to the moon. Her parents allowed the game to go on for an hour before announcing bedtime. Though Evelyn wasn't happy about this, no longer needing to dodge the family of giants thrilled Ferdinand. It was annoying and painful. After some pleading, Zinko and Rayoni agreed she could have her bedtime story with everyone, which was when she ran up to Ferdinand. Can you tell me a story? Please, please, please? Evelyn pleaded as lightning climbed on Ferdinand's lap. That ring of green around her black irises was exactly like grandmother's. It didn't matter how many times he saw it. I love you, my child, but Papa's getting tired. Thank you for letting me know you made it safe and sound. Evelyn's father's voice was weak and shaky. Oh, I'm sorry, Papa. You should take a nap and feel better. I'll talk to you again, and when I come home, I'll make you all better. I know, my child. I know. Ferdinand ended the call. Not only was Lyramark crying, he was fighting to stay composed as well. Of course. Closing his eyes, Ferdinand banished the pain of that memory to the back of his mind. Everyone! My big brother's telling me a story he created just for me! A small smile tugged at his lips. Then nearly a dozen burly men, the older brother's wives, and various servants filed into the massive room. Red blanketed the skeleton, and he couldn't stop shaking. Focus on Evelyn. What do you want your story to be about? I want a story about a bunny! A short pause in the music froze his heart. Only when a new song started was Ferdinand able to breathe again. What does the bunny do? Ooh, the bunny travels the world! Okay, there once was a bunny who was smaller than the other bunnies. Is the bunny a boy or a girl? Moroseness ended, but drums quickly replaced it. This was a strange soundtrack to a child's story. A boy. Well, he was smaller than all his bunny brothers and sisters, and all his bunny neighbors, and all his bunny friends. But he had a giant fluffy tail and soft, sleek fur. He also had the longest ears of any bunny in all of bunny history. His ears were so long he could wrap them around himself like a scarf and cover himself like a blanket. They were useful for that, but they were floppy and dragged on the ground when he hopped around. His friends always tripped and slipped on his ears when they played. This hurt his ears, but seeing them fall hurt his heart. One day he decided he had enough. He'd fix his long ears so he could play and have fun with everyone. The other bunnies didn't know how to fix his problem, so he left to find someone who did. Waving goodbye, he hopped off. He hopped and hopped and hopped. For miles did he hop. miles upon miles, till he came to a large pond with a huge frog. His heart leapt for joy. The frog had no ears at all. "Oh, great frog," he said, "please, how did you get rid of your ears?" The frog laughed and said, "What a stupid question, foolish bunny. Frogs don't have ears." The bunny told him about his problem and his quest and asked the frog for help. The frog thought, "You see that bug way out there in the middle of the pond?" The bunny nodded, and the frog whipped out his tongue. It stretched 20 feet to snatch at the bug. After the frog finished nom-nomming it, Evelyn squealed as Ferdinand tickled her belly. He said, "Foolish bunny, my tongue is the longest any frog has ever had. With it I can reach food the other frogs can't. It's a good thing, and so are your ears. It'd be foolish to get rid of them." The bunny didn't like this answer. A long tongue may be useful to a frog, but these ears weren't helping him. He bowed to the frog and continued on. Next, the bunny came to a huge lake. It was so big, going around wasn't possible. So he jumped in. He swam and swam and swam till his little bunny feet couldn't swim anymore. But the shore was nowhere in sight. He tried staying aloft, but eventually sank. "Oh no!" Evelyn cried, interrupting him. Ferdinand smiled at her, ignoring all the intensely staring eyes and unceasing lightning. A giant fish, searching for a midday snack, saw the sinking bunny. It swam fast, catching the bunny on his back and lifting him to the surface. The fish took the bunny to the other side of the lake. "What's the bunny doing so far out in the water?" The bunny told him of his quest, then asked the fish for help. "I'm the biggest fish in this lake. If I wasn't this big, I couldn't have caught you and brought you safely to shore. Find what your ears are good for, instead of trying to rid yourself of them." As before, the bunny wasn't happy with this answer. He bowed politely to the fish and thanked him for help. Ferdinand studied Evelyn, determining how long the story should be. Her eyes were wide and focused. He continued until the bunny met a bird, a monkey, a zebra, and a platypus. The latter made her laugh when it explained how being the strangest of creatures was a good thing. When Rayoni, Evelyn's new mom, signaled for him to wrap it up, Ferdinand had the bunny return home. 2 years had passed. When the bunny saw his friends, he was happy and sad. He missed them, but he couldn't play with them. "We never cared about your long ears," they insisted, and invited him to hop around with them. They hopped and played for hours in celebration of his return. It wasn't till the sun had set and everyone went home that he realized his ears didn't hurt. Neither had anyone fallen on them. But why? Unsure, he asked his parents. Do you know what they said? "No, tell me!" "Your ears are still long and beautiful, but you're no longer the smallest bunny. You've grown into your ears." Evelyn laughed and gave him a hug, hitting one of the partially healed gashes with her lightning touch. "Yay! Can I have another one? About an ogre this time." Ferdinand chuckled. "I'm sorry, my lady, but it's past your bedtime." "Then, can I have one tomorrow night? Please, please, please?" "If you're good, and your parents agree." Loose black curls bounced as she leapt off his lap and ran to Zingho and Rayoni. Sitting next to Evelyn's new parents were 3 people obviously not of the Artemis household. Seeing them stole what little color Ferdinand had. A lean, perfectly manicured woman sat, a 5-year-old girl on her left and a 9-year-old girl on her right. She looked thoughtful for a moment before speaking. "The story is unfinished. You never said how the bunny's ears could be useful." "I'm sorry, Duchess." Ferdinand looked down, though he should be kneeling. Sometimes we never learn what our traits are good for. And some traits are completely useless. Harshness filled her tone. Ferdinand walked over to his mother and knelt down low in front of her. "Who's she?" Everyone heard Evelyn's loud whisper to her dad. This made Duchess Samult scowl. Ferdinand didn't see the expression, but he felt it, along with an oppressive increase in tension. The room emptied of all but the Samult's family. He stayed on one knee, head bent low in a proper show of respect. This is how they stayed. No one made a sound. Even the 2 small girls, his little sisters, didn't move. "You've gained weight." Disdain filled her words. "I apologize, Duchess. It became necessary. I failed again." Ferdinand almost reached up to turn off the music, but fear held his hand. "Is this another rebellion of yours?" "No, Duchess. I'm sorry." They sat in silence a while more. "What have you been doing?" No matter how you interpreted it, her voice was ice cold. "What are you referring, Duchess?" Displeased, she backhanded him. Hard. Not as hard as his cousin, but enough that familiar dull still knocked him back. "You know perfectly well." "My apologies, Duchess. I don't." Ferdinand returned to his proper position, kneeling at her feet. "Our prince. Do you have any idea the condition he was in upon arriving?" Ferdinand clenched his jaw and closed his eyes in time for that dull still to backhand him again. How dare you leave him like that? She stood and continued, her son groveling at her feet as he should. It's your responsibility to care for him, to protect him. Instead of staying by his side, you came here to play make-believe and tell pointless stories to a stranger? The Duchess grabbed hold of his hair, lifting him by it, pulling him high enough for another strike to land. He'd stay on his butt, but that wasn't an option. Back to his knees Ferdinand went. His back and cheeks screamed. I chose to follow my orders to greet our allies. You dare talk back to me? The needs of your prince always come before playing with some child. Yes, Duchess. When his lip quivered, he bit it, keeping his head down.